is up? What is up? Welcome to my podcast, Guys Dealings with Feelings. Getting into feelings one for sure today. I want to talk about how we get in our own way, set traps for ourselves, and continue a cycle that is tough to get out of. Hopefully, it can cause you to look at some things objectively at yourself, do some reflection, see, is this happening to me? Is this something I'm doing? So I know I did it to myself for years. And as I talk it out, I can really see the box that I put myself in. And I talked a little bit about it on one of my reels, and that was dealing with guilt. Specifically, what I dealt with, it was in a death, but I mean, guilt, it was a major thing in my childhood too, dealing with guilt. So guilt was already something that was in me that was already an icky subject. And then the mixture of that and Joel passing, and there's the guilt from moving on. So I've lost somebody I love, and as a father, I don't want to move on from my child. I mean, I need to hang back, and it's all this is in our head, right? So Joel's gone, he's passed away, so he's not back anywhere, he's gone. And so and then I've got the other kids and I'm needing to move forward and I'm not moving forward. So now I'm guilty because I'm not moving forward, and I'm guilty if I'm moving forward. And so here's the box I'm telling you I painted for myself. And how could I move forward when I'm painted in this box? And the reality is this, so many of our emotions are dealing with something in our past or our future. Rarely is it something in our present. So I'll keep coming back to being present is going to be the solution to these issues. But there's also, I have the feeling that I kind of need to prove things to myself. I can't just say, well, I'm not going to be that way, or I'm not going to feel a certain way. I need to know, well, why? What changed? Why are we not going to be wrapped around the axles on this shit all the time, all of a sudden? And so I have to convince myself, I guess, to, for lack of being able to come up with something better, that I don't need to continue to feel like this. I don't need to feel guilty. And regret falls right in with this as well. And it's due to actions that may or may not have been completely in our control. We may or may not have made a mistake, something we wouldn't do moving forward. The learning piece, so I'm going to get to here in a bit. That's where this is born from. It's something we did in the past that we feel really bad about, and we just keep ruminating on it, and we cycle it over and over and over in our head, and we feel down again, and then we do it again, and we almost get addicted to this pattern. We as humans are very patterned, as is everything around us. And so we get addicted to this pattern of ruminating on these negative thoughts and kind of driving ourselves into the ground. And my emotion of choice was guilt and regret. I'm not sure that everybody will be the same. We get angry at ourselves, we're hard on ourselves, whatever it is, where you're ruminating on something where you've made a mistake and you obviously can't fix it because it's in the past, whether you said you're sorry or not, depending on the outcome of what happened. So if it's an issue where I've done something and I've fouled up a relationship and it is all my fault, like I did something wrong and I shouldn't have done it, and so the relationship is now over. And this is not just partners, this is relationships with other humans. And so now this relationship is over and it's my fault, and I really cherish this relationship. And so now I'm upset and I have this negative emotion, and now I'm beating myself up, whether it would be regret or anger or guilt or whatever. So that's what I'm talking about. And when we do this to ourselves, we're not going anywhere but right there where we sit, ruminating on the same thoughts. That is a cycle that we can get caught in and just stay stuck there. I had a therapist tell me one time that guilt was a wasted emotion. And for the most part, I agree with that. It's what good is it doing me to sit around feeling guilty? What I came out of it with is there's a place for these negative emotions, in that they are going to key us to learn. And I feel like it's in several ways that we're being keyed to do so. But the primary one is we don't like feeling this way. This is a negative feeling. We don't want to have regret. We don't want to have guilt. We don't want to have anxiety. We don't want to have these negative feelings. And so how can we prevent it? And that is to make sure that we learn whatever the lesson or lessons are that came with the incident that have us feeling the way we feel. So I've done something in this relationship that's caused the relationship to end, and now I have regret, I have guilt, I miss this individual, blah, blah. They don't want to talk to me. Okay, so I need to apologize to them in the best way I can. If that's not contacting them, write a letter that you never send, burn it, talk it through inside yourself, and get to a point where, I forgive myself for what I did in that incident. And I learned that I don't need to do that again because it can cause me to lose somebody who I don't want to lose. And it will make me feel awful in the future. And I don't like feeling awful in the future. And so you've learned a lesson. So now you've taken a negative event where you made a mistake. I made a mistake. So I've taken a negative event where I've made a mistake. I've learned a crucial lesson that's going to prevent me from making that same mistake again. I've forgiven myself for making the mistake, even if it's just inside myself. And now I can put it to bed. It's not a bad thing anymore. I learned something. And what I learned from that turns into a relationship tool that allows me to make a friendship that grows into the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Because I had, with learning comes some suffering. With gain comes hard work. It costs sacrifice. It cost. There's always a cost. It does not have to be fiscal. It can be mental. It can be emotional. It can be physical, not fiscal, but physical. And we're going to pay a price. And anything worth getting is going to cost something. And so when we get that lesson that we learned, the cost was the friendship that we lost. But you can move forward now. It's not a negative any longer. Now it's a positive. So we don't have to ruminate on these negative thoughts and why did this happen and why did I do that? I'm so stupid and I can't believe I did blah, blah. We don't do that anymore. We look back on, if we catch ourselves looking back on this situation, so hopefully we begin to move forward. We're not even thinking about it anymore. We think about, I'm not going to do whatever it was. So there's something stupid. I've not done this, but I spit in somebody's face and they said, they told me if I ever spit in their face that we would never speak again. And they held true to their end of the deal. So I've learned I'm not to spit in people's faces. If I do, I will lose them. Then I will feel bad, blah, blah, blah. Now I know I don't do that. So now when I think I'm going to spit in this guy's face, I don't think, oh, I lost this relationship and I can't believe I lost this. I think, no, don't do that. There's negative stuff that comes with that. And I don't want that negative stuff. I don't do it. So now when I go to look back, man, I lost so-and-so friend. Yes, but I learned not to spit in people's faces. Like, big deal. And I understand, and I'm simplifying this. Please make this a more complex thing in your head. Apply it to where you are if you've lost a relationship. If somebody, okay, so we'll go to an even tougher one and talk about it with Joel. So I don't want to leave my kid behind, quote unquote. And again, how much of that is just in my head because he's not behind, he's just gone. And I'm not going to kill myself. Suicide was not going to be an option. So all of it's in my head. I say in my head, it's inside my body, wherever the voice inside me is coming from. So this battle is just me. And when I get down to it, I want to move forward. I don't want to continue to feel like shit. And if I feel guilty and I have regrets and I have anxiety and I'm sitting around depressed because I just think about all the things I missed and that he's gone and it's just sad, then that's an option. And it was an option I chose for a long time. But it's not the only option. So what I could do is understand, and man, I've learned so much now since he's passed that it's awful and I can't change that he's gone, but because of all that I've learned since then, I mean, it was such an amazing thing. Like, I've learned so much and it's completely reshaped who I am as a human being and what I'm doing with my life. It's really just reshaped my entire life and I have a great life. So it's all the positive, and it all came from this awful negative thing that happened. yeah, if I was given a choice where can it not happen or it's going to happen, then I would choose for it not to happen 100 times out of 100 times. But that's never going to be given to me as an option. So that's not somewhere where I'm going to spend time. I'm going to spend time not feeling bad. And I'm able to do that because I've learned so much since Joel passed away. I've learned, just so much. As far as, I've got a diploma from the University of Alabama, and I've learned 10 times as much since his passing as I did at my time at the University of Alabama. And not from some book necessarily. There's definitely been some book learning, but through experiences and going through different therapies and working on myself and the physical part and becoming more spiritual, all of these things and all of this growth have been a result of and never would have happened but for Joel passing away. And because I don't have an option to go back and change it and never will, then we're not going to spend time worrying about that because it's not an option. So, what are the options are to sit around and feel like shit and be unhappy and have a ton of anxiety, or, and that's hard, as we've talked about before, that's hard, just as hard as out here busting my tail, getting better at stuff. And I don't want to do that anymore because that sucks. So I'm going to find the way to find the positive in situations. And the positive in his passing is all that I have learned and all the changes that have occurred and the new path that my life is on. And that is a very positive thing. And since I can't change the past, I've got to make lemonade out of the lemons. And I'm good with it. Like, it's not bullshit. Like, I'm really good with it. And I think that when we look back on things that we messed up on, quote unquote, there is so much learned in those moments. And it takes us so much time to learn the same amount when we do it the right way, where we're not learning via touching the hot stove, that it's a gift. And it's a gift that we've given ourselves on accident. But if we make the absolute most out of that gift, then it is exactly that. It is a gift. And what I'm doing with this is only because Joel happened, and it feels amazing. Just the simplest things, talking to guys, and they're dealing with some really hard shit. And if I'm able to just shine a little light on something that can spawn a change or spawn some action to be taken, like the reward that comes from that is amazing. And I wouldn't even be thinking about these things but for Joel's passing. So it is a terrible nightmare that turns into a gift. And so if you can back it down from an extreme like that and put it in between the spectrum that I built of not spitting in my friend's face and learning that lesson, or the ultimate, a death and the loss and all the things that we learn as a result. So I do know a ton about, the way that Joel passed away, and that early on I knew I wanted to do something early on. I've known early since he first passed that the best way for me to heal was to try and help people. And, the first thing I thought of was the way he had passed it's not a very common. I'd never heard of it happening the way it happened. It did. It occurred 28 times a year. And I think we're still around 32 times a year that a heat stroke will happen. But, I did learn about that, and it was more specific and guided towards that, but it spurred me to make radical changes in me to overcome the sadness and depression, all the nastiness that came with it, spurred me to become the person and learn all the things I've learned about trauma and how to deal with it, with this holistic wellness and, all these things. All that came on because he passed away. And that's such a gift. Like, I feel it's not, it's bad. Like, that part's bad. So here Joel passes. It's going to be bad no matter if I'm a curled up in the fetal position in a corner, or I'm thriving and in my absolute best self. This is still going to be over here, and it is going to be sad when we think about it. But this doesn't have to be the same. These are complete as different as my hands are. These two things are. And if you just listen, and I've got one hand in a fist and the other shaking, I'm making clear that you cannot take away the sadness of one, but it is not a sentence to be sad for forever. And so if you can take that spectrum in between those two things and apply it to yourself and your circumstances, if it's a parent who's passed away, and you think about all the things your mom or dad had taught you or hadn't taught you, whether it was through positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, whether it was things that they did that you didn't ever want to do, whatever it was, we learn a bunch from our parental figures. So you lose your parent and you have, these, and it spurs you to learn. I want to learn more about, and you go do it, and then you become something with that information. You do something, you help somebody, or you come to thrive off of what you learned off of that. And it was all spurred by this terrible event. It's a positive. You've made lemonade out of your lemons. And guys, I really encourage you to put some serious thought into this. And when you're able to do that and take away the lesson, and it's important to you, or you wouldn't feel like shit about it. So if we were talking about a friend that I didn't like, and I spit in their face and I lost the relationship with that friend, then I really wouldn't learn anything about spitting in faces. I'd be like, good. I wanted some bitch out of my life, and he's out of my life. And, so I know if I want to get out somebody out of my life, I spit in their faces. It's not the same type deal, but if it's a deal where you really feel loss and you feel regret and you feel guilt, then it's something that hits home to you, or you wouldn't feel that way. And so when you heal from it, the strength that comes with it and the power that comes with it is insurmountable, because A, you learn that you're a badass and you can turn lemons into lemonade. And B, we free ourselves from the negative emotions that are dominating things in regret and guilt. And I lived so much of my life, even before Joel, obviously I had so much in my life that turned out to be, make me feel guilty. And I never knew this tool. Like, why am I feeling guilty? Like, it's important to me. Let's spend a little time on it. Why am I having this emotion? Okay, I don't want to have this emotion anymore. Break it down. What did I learn? A lot of times we'll look back on a situation we feel bad about. We did the learning. We changed our behaviors. We don't do it again. It was the only time I ever did this. And we don't acknowledge it, though. So the emotional side, the emotional piece, wherever it's coming from in our bodies, whether it's the sympathetic nervous system or our brains or wherever these emotions are, they're learning more every day, it seems like, with things firing back and forth inside our bodies. Pardon me. So wherever these emotions are coming from, it's completely separate and apart from what is actually happening. If you can just connect the dots, you've already done all the heavy lifting. A lot of times you've moved on, you're ruminating about something you did that you regret from a couple of years back. You've already learned the lesson. You've already changed the behaviors. You've already benefited from the learning and the changes, but you're not acknowledging the gift that the circumstance that's causing regret was. You're still treating it as if something that you should be ruminating on the negative instead of ruminating on the positive. Stop. Connect the dots. Hang on a damn second, man. I learned a lot from that lesson. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to get this job. And this job has really changed my life. And damn, that really was. I mean, I'm not glad it happened, but it happened and I can't change it. And I'm glad I learned those lessons. And the light bulb can come on and you can relieve yourself from that nasty feeling. You don't have to keep feeling like that. Like that's a false idea that we have to be punished for something we've done in the past. If a punishment comes with it, you break the law and the law says you got to do X, Y, and Z when you do this, then you got to do it. But inside yourself, once you've paid the price, quote unquote. So when I spit on a friend and lost the friendship, I paid the price. I lost the friendship. I went through the pain and the suffering of losing the friendship. With my son, I paid the price. I went through the pain and the suffering of losing a child and the awful shit that comes with that and how everything falls apart around you. And I've paid that price. So I don't have to keep paying a price. I can. I mean, that's an option. If I want to pay till the day I die and suffer, I'm definitely capable of doing it. A, I know that. And B, I don't even know, a lot of people wouldn't even be shocked. Like, of course, somebody loses a child, they're devastated till the end of their lives. And so I think it would even almost be acceptable for people around me, and not now. Obviously, I stepped backwards into that. It would seem a little unusual, but had I not climbed out of it and still felt like shit all the time and kind of moping around, really not enjoying life and not understanding how awesome it can be and not learning and growing and trying to, getting to a point where I'm thriving and doing my best ever, like I definitely could have chosen that path, but I didn't. And guys, I'm going to tell you, it started one step at a time. I just got out there and got going. I just started taking a step. And I was taking steps early on. As soon as he passed, I was taking steps. I knew I didn't want to feel like it's so awful. And those of you who have experienced it know exactly what I'm talking about. Like the gut wrenching, god awfulness, waking up every day and realizing that you're not in a nightmare, that it's actual real life that is the nightmare. Like it sucks so bad and you feel so hopeless. But I knew I didn't want to feel that way. And so I was throwing everything I could at it. And that's why, when I talk to y'all, and, if you're part of the program that I've created, it's not one thing that fixes it. There's no fast fix to it. It's one step at a time. It's acknowledging you got to do it. It's learning processes, it's learning tools, and it's putting them in place. And there are a bunch of them out there, processes and tools. And everything comes down to the man in the mirror and what you're willing to change and what you're willing to do to relieve yourself of negative emotions. What are you willing to put in work-wise to relieve them? And, if you're willing to do the work, there's happiness and fulfillment on the other side. If you, and I understand, I guess there is one thing that it takes to fix this, and it's one thing, that's change. Without change, there's no change. And so if you don't change, you can't expect things to change. But once you've decided that change needs to occur and you just start trying to change, you're going to learn what to or not to do in changing. And so you may make a change and say, oh shit, I don't want to do that. And you may have to make another change. But knowing that change is needed is crucial. And so if you realize that guilt and anxiety and regret and beating yourself up, feeling stuck, if these are all things that you don't want, then change the way you're recalling what has occurred in your life. And it's not changing the way you remember things. And look, folks, we do not remember shit the way it happens. And that is obvious. In the life before Joel, I was in the criminal justice system. I was a clerk for the local government here in Nashville. And I sat in the courtroom and listened to testimony. And often there would be testimony and then there would be some video. And they didn't line up ever. And there's been tons I don't just do on personal experience. That doesn't give us a real test of data. There's been plenty of studies that show how shitty eyewitness testimony is. And it has zero to do with the individuals involved in the testimony. It's not that individual has some clear bias that they're inputting into the situation. They have a subconscious bias. We all do. Our beliefs driving the system in our brains, the RAS, reticular activating system, filtering things out. We are not seeing the same things as the person next to us. And when they show the video in the courtroom, not everybody sees the same thing on the videos, but we can see that the blue car is not blue. or that it's not a car at all, it's a truck. I mean, you see some really obvious things that make it clear that the person testifying is recalling wrong. And what we do is we hook an emotion to an event, and that emotion drives the details that are recalled and the details that we really store, because we're really just storing the feeling from the event. And so whatever it was, so that event made me excited, then I remember the things about the event that made me excited. If it made me scared, I remember the things that were scary about it. If they're happy, it's the same thing. So we're not recalling what actually happened. If we took let's take a bad, regretful memory and played a tape back of it, we would be shocked at what we saw on the tape, because it isn't the same thing. And we would be looking at it with new eyes, because we would have learned at that point. So our reticular activating system would be seeing different things. So folks, when we look back and we ruminate on these events, it is as if we are ruminating on a fictional story that we have kept in our head to play into the emotional side of us. And without going down some rabbit holes on that, I'm going to have to leave it with you on that part. But just know that we don't have to stay there. We don't have to be in this position. We can forgive ourselves. We can learn from the event. We can be proud that we learn when we make mistakes, and we can move forward and not ruminate and live in a negative place of an event that is skewed out of proportion, to continue the self-deprecating emotional feelings that we're having. Like, that's what's happening. So if you can just think about it as, Tom Bilyeu says, we're having a chemical response to an event that's occurring. Like, there's a biological and chemical response that's occurring inside of us in response to the external factors. And if we can remove the emotions and just really focus on what happened, there's no reason to continue to beat ourselves up or to continue to what should I have done or could I have done, or things could be so different and blah. They're not. Things are the way they are. Now, what are you going to do? Sit there and worry and anxiety and regret and guilt, or learn, become a badass and move forward? So many of you are badasses, you don't even acknowledge it. You've done so many things, you've gotten through so many tough times, you don't even look in the mirror and go, damn, I'm a badass. And you ought to do it, not to make your ego grow or your head get bigger, but so when the tough times hit, and they're going to hit again, when that whirlwind spins up, you're ready. Like, I'm a badass. It's all good. Shit's going to suck. I'm going to be sad for a minute. I'm going to have some anxiety because things are a little scary right now. I don't know what's going on. You're going to put all the pieces back together. You're going to be like, roger that. You're going to keep on moving forward. You're going to be right back on your horse. But if you don't do anything about it, then you're just going to stay where you are. And when the next hurdle comes, it's just going to be another hurdle that you have to overcome on the stack of hurdles that you've already got. Folks, thank you so much for listening. As always, I hope that this hits with you somehow, somewhere, some way, and it can get you into a place where you want to take some action, some positive action, make a positive change in your life. Get fed up with just the dumb shit. I'm not living this way anymore. Get fed up with that and start taking action and making changes and doing things that are at least an attempt to become a better human being the next day and the day after that and the day after that. Worry about today. Do something today that's going to set you up for success tomorrow. And then tomorrow you'll have a step up for doing something for success for the next day. And you don't worry about it all at one time because it's too overwhelming. Just worry about it right now. What are you doing right now? Are you doing something right now? Maybe you are. Maybe listening to this podcast is something you should be doing something else. I'm not sure. But if you're educating yourself, that is important. We don't have to be breaking our backs to be doing something important. Educating ourselves to become better, do better for ourselves is time well spent. So again, I hope this hit. Thank you so much for giving me your time and listening. You want to follow me on Instagram at I2UThrive. Get to my website, I, the number 2, the letter U, THRIVE.com. ituthrive.com. That's ituthrive.com. Look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. Hope you have an awesome day. Peace.